Ummah, what does it do? Divides. And when it divides, it gets conquered. And when it was conquered again, this was during the time of the Crusades. And many of us, we've heard about the Crusades, we've learned about it, we know this, but one of the greatest figures during the time of the Crusades was Salahuddin Ayyubi. And Salahuddin is not a big shot scholar, if you don't know. He is Kurdish. He's not even Arab, right? He's not even Arab. And in fact, people used to make fun of Salahuddin because he couldn't even speak Arabic correctly. And why are you listening to this guy? He doesn't even know Arabic. And if I could paint the picture at this time, during the time of the Crusades, what was going on is very similar to the Ummah that we know it today. Very similar to what we know today. During the time of the Crusades at this area, during the time of Salahuddin, the Muslim Ummah was completely divided. The Khalifa really basically ruled over Baghdad. You had different rulers ruling over Spain, you have different rulers ruling over Morocco, and North Africa, you had different people ruling all over the place. It was divided. And the people, they did not want to fight the Crusaders. Why? Because at this time, Europe was one nation. Europe was completely united, and the Muslims were divided. And not only was Europe united, but Europe was united underneath the Pope. So the Pope would say something, he would declare a crusade, and the people would go and fight. No questions asked. That's unity, right? If the Pope asked people to stop, having bad courage of him, you won't even see that happen today. So the Pope would say, they hear, and they would obey. And Salahuddin Ayyubi, he did something very revolutionary, something that is unheard of. He, rather than being defensive, he started attacking the Crusaders. He started attacking the Crusaders. He was the aggressor. And when he started doing that, the people thought that Salahuddin was completely out of his mind. Europe is an ocean, and it has no borders. That the people of Europe are united, and when you attack them, it's like poking a beehive, and they'll come after you. So when Salahuddin Ayyubi, he was the one who instigated this. When he started attacking, the Pope called a crusade on the Holy Land. And when he called the crusade on the Holy Land, who came out to the battle? You can tell how serious somebody is in war by who they have to lead their armies, right? If you're really serious about war, you don't have a general lead your army. That's kind of pathetic. When you're really serious about war, you have the kings lead the armies. So when Salahuddin attacked the Crusaders, the Pope called for a crusade in the Holy Land. And who came out? Who took the Pope's call? Of England, it was Richard the Lionheart. And it was the King of France. And it was the King of Germany. Not the generals, not the princes, the king. And not any king, Richard the Lionheart. We learn about Richard the Lionheart today. We learn about Frederick Barbarossa. Barbarossa means red beard. Frederick, red beard, right? Frederick Barbarossa. And the German army itself was so large that when it left from Germany to go to the Holy Land, they took an army of 300,000 people. And when the Muslims, they would hear that 300,000 people are coming, the ulama who would fight this, they recanted and they left. So there were some people, some of the ulama, they would actually go out to fight, but when they heard that Frederick Barbarossa was coming with an army of 300,000, they went back. And of course they're ulama. The ulama, when they do something, they'll of course find fatwas or ways to go around it. They'll make, they know everything, Allahu Akbar, right? So if they don't want to fight, they'll prove that why fighting is against Islam. But Salahuddin, who did want to fight, they talked against him. But Salahuddin Ayyubi was somebody who would not be deterred. And in his time, he brought back the banner of jihad when the Muslims were divided, when the Muslims were easily conquered against an enemy who was united, who was stronger than they were. And what happened is that he was given victory over these people. And the Crusades didn't end in a few years. They went on for decades during Salahuddin's life. One king after another after another. So this is the other revolution that happened within our time. The world that we live in today is very unique. And it's never been seen on this planet before. And it's never been seen in the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam before. Never. Because right now, we are living in a time where there are great changes in the system that we knew today. One of the things that I want to talk about is that in 1924, we had something very shocking happen in the Muslim world. And what that was is that in 1924, the Khalifa, the system that ruled the Muslims for over 1,000 years, it was abolished and it was made illegal. First time that ever happened in the history of the Muslims. In the past, the caliphs have been killed. In the past, there have been more than one. But in 1924, it was abolished. And the system that ruled for over 1,300 years came to an end by one vote by the United Nations. And when the system was abolished, it was abolished in the most unique method. It was another thing that happened that had never happened before, is that the ones who brought about this abolishing weren't like, as some people say, like the Westerners or the plots. The people who brought this about were the Muslims themselves. That Turkey, which had been Muslim for over 1,000 years, they became officially secular, officially against religion, and that was the nature of Turkey, of nationalism. In fact, in America, women can wear hijab when they go to school. In Turkey, you couldn't wear hijab until recently, if you want to go to university. And then that system spread. Syria became Ba'athist, and Ba'athism is a system that is officially secular, officially against religion, anti-religion. Egypt became nationalism through Nasserism. That the entire system was ruled by one person and his cult of personality. And one area after another you see in the Muslim lands, what has happened before was killed. And it wasn't killed, it wasn't destroyed, it was completely eradicated within those societies. That the Qurans were now being written in English or written in Turkish by Muslims living in that country. The Adhan was given in Turkish rather than being given in Arabic. And this happened from one area to another and another and another. And you really saw a complete shock and a trauma happen to the Muslims at this time. One of the reasons for the shock and trauma is that after this, the curriculum changed. And the education system, they also changed. So when you go to Pakistan or you go to the other countries, you learn history from 1920-something and beyond. So whenever that country came into power, that's when your history started. And then the world history, you learn it in general like everybody else. So these are the history that people learn. So there was a great losing of knowledge throughout the Muslim world. People don't know who they are. And if you don't know who you are, if you don't know where you've been, you can't go anywhere. If you ain't done nothing, you ain't gonna do nothing. That's what Malcolm X used to say. And then this identity was lost. Everywhere. And now we are living in a time where this identity that's been lost is still perpetually being lost. And at this time, when when the Khalifa was gone, and when this type of system happened, when all these systems were taken out, the Muslims, they revolted. And they revolted against who? The colonial rulers, right? Because most of the Muslim world was ruled by colonists at the time. So the Muslims, they had revolutions bigger than the revolutions we see today, with more numbers, with more ferocity. And yet, what did those revolutions accomplish? Those revolutions accomplished creating either, systems that you saw like Nasser come into power, or you saw a system that brought in Mubarak into power. You saw Gaddafi come into power, or you saw Assad come into power. This is when the people revolted against the colonialists. They didn't revolt to revive the Islamic system that they knew before. They revolted to imitate their system. They revolted to bring about their system that they had, and we're going to incorporate that into our lives, into our ways. And this happened all the way from Indonesia all the way to Morocco, you can imagine. And yet these revolutions that happened that are in greater numbers in the past, they only brought about continual suffering and continual downtroddenness of the Muslim that we see today. Because when you revolt, sometimes when you revolt, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will allow you to revolt, and will allow you to gain numbers, and will allow you to gain media, and will allow you to change something just so He can put you further into the hole, further into darkness, and so the people who perished during that revolt, they have no significance. And what did they create other than another system that rules them and oppresses them? This is what happened, and this is what's still happening today. And what we have to realize is that when a person does a revolution, because chaos will always happen, you go high, then you have to go low. When you instigate a revolution, when you try to change the evils within your society, and you have to change the evil within your society, if you're not angry at what's going on in the world, you're not alive. You've died. Something's wrong with you. If you look at the world and you sleep well at night, knowing that everything is okay, then there is something seriously wrong with you. Because the world is in chaos. And the world is in disorder. And it's becoming more acceptable to be that way. And the revolution that we see going on, they might bring about a change, or they might bring about the exact same system. They might get rid of this leader, but to get rid of the leader, the system is still in place. And if that system is still in place, nothing can change and nothing will change. Because how can it? The system is still there. So today, as Muslims, we have to realize that if you want to bring drastic change, then to bring that change, you need to revolt using knowledge. You need to have a revolution based on something that's concrete. You need to have a revolution, and you need to go against the oppressor with something that is tangible and something that the Muslims in the past they used to revolt against. When they saw injustice happening, they knew what they wanted, they knew it was unjust, and they had a system they could follow. But if you revolt using a system that is still unjust, then you're going to continue to stay in your downtrodden path. You're going to continue that way. And we can see this happening, whether it's with the Intifada, whether it's with Nasserism, whether it's with any type of system that you've seen. Anytime the Muslims get en masse and they revolt, you go to the Tahrir Square and you ask them, what are you revolting for? And they'll say that we want, and they used to say that we want Mubarak to leave. That was their goal. And Mubarak is now gone, but is the system in Egypt better or is it the same? It's the same. And it will continue to be the same until the Muslims realize that when you revolt, you have to revolt using the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the method that Prophet ﷺ brought with him. Because that method and that revolution, when it happened to people in the desert in Arabia, within a few hundred years, they were able to conquer the world and rule it in a way that was just. And one thing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows within the Quran is how the weak can become powerful, how the powerful can become weak. And this is definitely shown during the time of Musa alayhi salam. During the time of Musa alayhi salam, Pharaoh, he had so much power in the land, he would kill the children as they were born. And for any of you who is a father or a mother, when your child is first born, if somebody comes to kill him, you're going to try to stop that person. You're going to revolt. You're going to take some action. But Pharaoh, he had such authority over these people, nothing. The Bani Israelis, they didn't do anything. They couldn't do anything. So this man is coming, taking your children right when they're born, murdering them in front of you in many cases. Was there an outcry? No. Was there anything? There wasn't anything. These people have become the lowest of the low, and Pharaoh become the highest of the high. But when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to change the people who are the low, they can become the high, and the people who are on the high, they can also become on the very low. And this is the system that we see happen again and again and again. And today, this world that we live in has become imbalanced. One, we have to realize as Muslims that the time of the prophets are now over. That the prophets of Islam are now dead and they're buried and they're not coming back. Before, it used to be that if there was great injustice in the world, Allah would send them a prophet, and then the prophet would correct that situation, and it would be done, right? If there's injustice, a prophet would be sent, and he would clear up that injustice. But when the Prophet ﷺ passed away, and it set the sun on this planet, it made us realize that, nobody's coming. And the people who are in charge of this are now the Muslims. That if you don't stand for what is right, if you don't demand justice, if you don't take this stance, then nobody will. And the world will fall into imbalance. And it will fall into imbalance not only politically, but also fall into balance economically. That people will rule using an economic system that says that there are some winners and there are some losers. That the people who are wealthy in that system increase their wealth because we live in a system of riba. And riba is a very unique concept because the person who is rich, he can then loan it out to others, and when you pay him back, you pay him back that amount plus more. So the one who's rich gets more, the one who's poor stays in his position. Environmentally, we're living in a time when water is running out. Out of all things, water, which is needed to keep people alive, is running out, and they say that within a few decades, water itself will be a commodity that's hard to find. So this is the system that we live in today. This is the reality we live in today. Unless the Muslims come together and realize what it takes to bring about revolution, that unless we come together and realize that there's 1.2 billion Muslims in the world, and 1 out of every 5 people in the world is a Muslim, until you recognize that and realize that, and you take action with that, then the world will continue to fall into chaos. Because that's just the way reality works. That's just the way the universe works, as it was. And something that I wanted to say and partly conclude on is that we are the Muslims. Let me say that again. We are the Muslims. We are the ones who believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As our families and our generation who've lived life after life, generation upon generation, living for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's your forefathers who fought fi sabilillah, not somebody else's. You are the people of Pakistan. You are the people of Arabia. You are the people of Africa. You are the people of Bosnia, Herzegovina. You are the people of India. The people of Pakistan ruled Pakistan for over 1,000 years, and they're the minority. The people of North Africa, they ruled Spain for over 800 years, and they're the minority. It's you. There's nobody else. You are part of one of the greatest legacies that's ever lived on this earth. You are a part of this group of people who understands and is led by the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about the Muslim that you are the best for the nations. You're not the best of the nation, you're best for the nations. You're best for the people around you. Why? Because you promote what is known to them and you forbid that which is evil, or you forbid that which is already known. And if we as Muslims, we don't take this action, we don't take this initiative, then the world we live in will continue to be in this state. If every revolution comes about in the future and it's always about to just change one person for another, if it's just to change this, then you'll see nothing happens. Rather, a revolution has to be based on knowledge. And one of the greatest losses we have today is that there's a real lack of knowledge among the masses of the people. Until that changes, until that reality changes, until people begin to learn what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala want from us, and until they begin to change that which is inside themselves, nothing can change. And nothing will change. Rather, it'll just go from one state to another. And this is the reality that we live in today. So I wanted to talk about, so this is sort of the theme of my talk today, is that how can we have a revolution based on knowledge? How can we have a next revolution based off of knowing the system that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to use and using that system to govern, rather than trading it for one thing after another, after another, after another, after another? How can we bring about that transformation? How can we understand who we are as people? Who are you? Where did you come from? Who was your ancestry? What have you done in the past, or what have your forefathers done in the past? Because if you look at your own history, you'll find that you have some of the best history on the planet. But since you don't know who you are, and you don't know what to do, we will continuously live in this type of state, of this type of affair. So, Jazakallah khairan, that's what I wanted to talk about today. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He gives us first and foremost the knowledge to learn about who we are, to learn about His deen, and then to bring about that system within the society we live in. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that the next revolutions we see, that they're revolutions based off of something that can bring significant change within that society, and not just change of name or change of this or change of that. Rather, the actual society itself changes. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He forgives us for all of our deeds, and He allows us to continue coming here and to gain knowledge. Jazakallah khairan.